Yeah, I like so much of the things that are difficult to count, people put a discount on when it's really they need a markup. Yeah, it's because you could discount the things you can count because you know exactly how much they are. So if you want to discount them by 10%, your prerogative. You understand how much it is. The things you can't count, people are always discounting because they just don't know what they are. Like, you have no idea what this is. You have no idea how much value it contributes, how much intangibles there. You should be marking that up, if anything, right?
Correct.
And that's just not the way the world works.
No. And it's one of the reasons why we have a people problem. I made a post about it the other day. It's like, so the industry's invested almost nothing in people, and then we're sitting here scratching our heads that we have a people problem. And it's like, well, if we spent as much as we do in preventative maintenance for equipment on our people, we'd be in a much better place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I could be oversimplifying here, and I am oversimplifying, but
remind me, you did a post, it was like a few months ago, I think, but about depreciation. And you were talking about depreciation being one of the roots of competition. Didn't you do like a vlog or vlog?
Yeah,
I need to get the term.
It wasn't depreciation though. It was
okay.
But I know what you're talking about.
I really thought that a big part of why, at least in our space, I won't speak to construction more generally, but the same principles apply. You get this depreciation non-cash element that I think people hack into all the time when they absolutely should not, right? So I feel like in our industry, people price below where they should be in large part because of either tax deferral incentives or depreciation on equipment that they feel is like a fluffy estimate, but they don't actually see like the cash. They can move around their payables and their working capital enough that they don't actually see the payments. They don't have to account for those. And then they don't fully price in true depreciation, which is hard to estimate anyway.
Can you explain depreciation? So just in layman terms,
the value loss of your equipment. So you buy it at a new price, you're going to sell it at some price down the road. And in between there, you're going to use it for some number of hours. And during that time, in our industry, right, it loses value. So it depreciates. You might buy a house with the thought that it's going to appreciate. I'm going to buy it for something and I'm going to sell it for more in the future. I don't know a single piece of equipment that is generally how it works over time. So I think but that is an estimate because you know what you're buying it for today. You don't know what you're going to sell it for in the future. And so you have to estimate that number. But if you're not good at estimating it, you aren't going to be good at costing your work. In the meantime, if you're on just a loan payment for that piece of equipment, or even sort of better or worse, depending how you look at it, it's in equity. There's no cash impact to the ownership of that equipment. And so I think people typically will dip into that effective cost that's being lost out of the machine and say it's not real cost because I'm working toward owning the machine.
Sure.
I'm managing my net working capital enough that I've got the cash to make the payments. But then you say by the end of the time you sold that, did you price high enough to actually replace it? And I think a lot of people don't. I think that people get into under depreciating equipment or being rosy about their assumptions or just not understanding the concept.
It's easy to be rosy about assumptions in business though, as I've learned. It's a hard balance because especially when you're growing a business, which is the goal of growing a business, or which is the goal of business, I think, when you're a small business, especially, is you want to keep setting goals, big goals, and doing big things and swinging for the fence. And, but a lot of it, as you become bigger and bigger, that kind of starts to bite you in the ass a little bit. And it's definitely, we've been there where it's like, okay, we're probably here because we've set too big of goals. So we weren't wrong in doing so. That said, it's not a sustainable business strategy at the same time.
You don't win work by pricing your first project really, really profitably very often, right? You get into things because you had a bad or flawed assumption and that led you to be competitive enough to win a job, that led you to be naive enough to get into the business, that led you to learn enough to get better at that business. And hopefully you survive that cycle to get to the point where you can run it sustainably. But yeah, I completely agree. You just, if you're going to grow the business, you have to take some swings, you have to take some risks. And then you put yourself in a position that if you do it right, you've learned enough that you can adjust. And I think the struggle is when people make the same mistakes over and over again and don't learn and don't adjust. If you struggle on that first project, but then don't find the market fit to get where you need to be on the pricing side or don't find the efficiencies internally to get to the cost structure you should have been at. That's what's really frustrating when you're competing against people like that, because you ultimately have to learn in order to survive. But I think you ultimately have to take some swings in order to create to begin with.
I definitely think so. I mean, that's what we've been trying to do. It sounds like you've been taking some swings too.
Talking about the lots thing?
Well, no, just a lot's changed.
Are we even recording this live right now?
We are.
Are we just going?
Well, it's not live.
Whatever.
Whoever's listening to this, it'll be a week or two. What is this? This Thursday.
Sorry to sidebar. I'm making extra work for you.
This goes this Thursday.
Okay.
But you...
we didn't do any prep for this conversation, so I'll just keep rolling.
No. So I met you... How long had you run Bellwether when I met you?
Well, I called you.
It was pretty new. Yeah.
I called you
Keaton introduced
because
us.
I had gotten your number and I said, how is your social media where it is?
Mm-hmm.
I am going to start an account for this forestry company I'm running. And I called you and you gave me a lot of pointers over the phone, which would have been in 2017, early 2017.
It was, sometime in 2017. I think it was late 2017.
I remember, was it late? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember
I met Keaton like in the fall of 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We have to look for some of my first Bellwether posts because I know you initially just said, what we should look to landmark that would be when I started following accounts like Daily Construction.
Yeah.
And I of the tips you gave me back then over the phone on a late night conversation, I remember you have to post every day.
Uh-huh.
You need to tag people in these posts that say daily in their name because they're reposting content and find big followerships.
Yeah.
And so we started doing a few of those things and you said, doesn't even matter what you post, you just need to post.
Yeah.
And I still don't. As an organization, we don't even successfully do that.
But you've done well, better than most logging companies.
Yeah, I'd like to think we have we've got some 3,000 or 4,000 followers, and we just had somebody that came to us through hearing about our company on your podcast. A guy named Alden, a Clemson graduate who started as a forester for us, but now runs a lot of our social media.
Imagine that.
And introduced to me through you, and he is just started a TikTok account. So I guess we got to be one of the only logging companies out there with a TikTok account. I have to imagine.
Yeah.
But
but you were still, when we met, the Bellwether was still pretty new. Not the company, but your involvement in Bellwether.
Yeah, absolutely. I had been less than a full year, I think, with the business. And the business itself, which was very small prior to us taking it over, had 10 years of history, but most of that history was with fewer than 10 employees.
How many crews were there when you guys bought it? 2?
2 crews when we bought it. Within 4 months, 6.
Yeah.
And then grew a little bit from there, but then right-sized, backtracked a bit because we were doing things that weren't sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've gotten to the point where we've really figured it out, I think.
Like what's not sustainable?
What was unsustainable about that growth?
Yeah.
It was growing into a new area where there's really geographic synergies to running these businesses. So both trucking, the more concentrated your trucking is, the better the operation runs. Recruiting, understanding the local labor force, and these are really local labor situations in rural areas throughout South Carolina where we work. So all we did was move 100 miles to the west, and it really was like running a different territory. We could have gone, I think, 2 or 3 states over for all. It would have been the same. So we had that sort of as an issue, but then just trying to grow and do it organically, which is the first time that we had actually started Cruise Up without purchasing an existing logging operation. And so we were running into just general problems I'm sure everyone faces, like chemistry and staffing, in trying to do the ramp up and mobilization of a new operation as opposed to just having the ability to flip the switch from one ownership team to the next ownership team.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, even today, I still believe that taking over crews that have really good teams that just have bad management and bad sort of ownership principles and business principles, that's where we add the most value. Because I think we've become pretty darn good at logging and pretty good at logistics and trucking in the industry, but we're still, the thing we're differentially better at is management. Business management, thinking through logging and trucking from an economic perspective, and then applying all the goods of those learnings to the guys on the ground so that we can differentially pay benefits and have incentives and do company parties and add value for our clients. And so, yeah, in the early days, we just hadn't had all that figured out and tried to grow organically outside of our territory and took it on the chin.
And historically, especially the logging in the South is not that sophisticated. Logging in the South is way different than logging in the Northwest. Logging in the Northwest is these big, very sophisticated companies like a Weyerhaeuser or just these behemoths.
Yep.
The South is not like that at all. It's very fragmented and very just simple, I feel like.
I think that two of the differences between the regions is, you said it, the larger companies, which I think is a function of some of the larger land bases in the Pacific Northwest and up into British Columbia. A lot of state-owned land, a lot of corporately held land, bigger management that goes on. And so there's a kind of bigger vendors and suppliers that do the logging and some of that as well. In the Southeast, incredibly fragmented land base, a lot of private land ownership. And in order to facilitate actually making transactions to get all of that wood from these various private owners into these mills to create the products, there has to be a lot of this intermediary layer of dealers and a lot of different hands that go into doing the transaction and then subcontracting the work out. Mm-hmm. And so there's just been no consolidation. And additionally, I think that from a work standpoint, you look at the Pacific Northwest or most areas of the rest of the world, it's a lot of cut to length operations. So in the woods, they're getting to do one additional value added step, which is not just felling the tree and dragging it out of the woods and doing some minimal processing, but they're actually cutting that log and the stems into cut to length pieces that meet the dimensions of mills. Largely in the Pacific Northwest, you're looking at sawmills more often. In the Southeast, a good majority of what we're shipping is pulpwood, which is going for products that are critical, right? We're making corrugate. I think one of the mills makes the majority of the pizza boxes in America that's in our area.
Nice.
And you've got, all these products, but they don't demand a cut to length, beautifully processed stem. We just go and ship in the Southeast what they call tree length. Mm-hmm. Cut it down, do some minimal processing to a top size, throw it on the truck. And I think for that reason too, you end up with it being a bit less of a high skill activity. There's still a lot of skill involved with sorting for the majority, for all these different markets, but not so much in processing the actual log product.
Yeah. It's driving behind a logging truck in the Pacific Northwest is a lot different than in the South. In the South, driving behind a logging truck, a lot more terrifying because you're like, yeah, those are just whole trees sitting on that thing, and they should have cut a little bit more.
And
off
they left the pointy end pointing at me.
Yeah, that's kind of dangling off a little bit. We're going 65 miles an hour right now. Yeah, it's a different world.
I am always amazed by how close drivers get to those things. Like they want to take a close look at them when, you should just stay back. And it's not to say that these trucks aren't incredibly, it can be just as safe as anything else, but it's something different to look at when you're behind it. And you're not going to hit the bumper first in the South because the trees are coming off the back of that trailer. Yeah. So it's a different way to ship. It's more economical for the mills. They get a lower cost product because there's not an additional processing cut to length step that occurs in the woods.
That makes sense. So when we met, it was early on. You guys grew, you right-sized, and it was, I think when we last talked, you were still in the thick of things. Or it was a rough, not rough, but difficult few years. Challenging.
2018, 19, and then to go right into, the 2020 was about when I didn't need 2020 in some ways. Yeah.
So what happened to the lumber market in 2020 and then timber market in 2020? What's the correct term? Timber?
Well, I would say our overall is the forest products market.
Forest products market. Yeah. What happened in 2020 and then where is it at now? Because I know that was a hot topic, especially in the construction industry with where forest products are, how expensive 2x4s are, for example. And where is it at now?
Yeah, and I'm going to start out by answering the most common question that my friends text me, which is,
please,
you have to be doing so well off of these lumber prices. Uh-huh. Well, first of all, we don't own a sawmill, so we don't make lumber. So let's clear that out. We're a logging and hauling company. We're doing the work in the woods to remove the timber and take it to the mill. So the sawmill is one of our customers. Number two, even if we were the supply and demand markets for lumber specifically, because it's probably who a lot of your building contractors are more interested in lumber than paper products, they're completely disconnected. So a high price for lumber on for the contractors have to pay per board foot or for 2x4s has really no translation to the amount the mill is paying for the raw product coming into the door, because those are completely separate functioning markets. The supply demand on the front side about how much are they able to produce with their capacity and how much is the market demanding for housing need and demand. That is not connected at all to how many standing trees exist within a certain radius of this mill that are of saw timber grade and how much capacity is there to bring them to the mill for the capacity of the mill itself. So in general, mills have had their cake and eat it too for the last few years. The markets obviously on the home building side have been really good for pricing. The sawmills have had very high prices. Everybody knows that. What fewer people know is that on the flip side, they're paying in general until of late, like the prices for saw timber had really not risen at all. And that's largely throughout the Southeast, dating all the way back to the recession. There's something called the Wall of Wood, which was the last time the housing market took a decline. A lot of landowners chose not to cut their timber down because prices fell. And that created, then there was an overstock of standing lumber quality timber. Meanwhile, the younger trees also grew up and became that same size. And for a decade on, there's been an overstocked supply of saw timber quality trees to buy, meaning the sawmills have not had to pay premium prices because there's more of it than they would need to meet their demand. And so they have also had kind of a nice environment to buy logs and a nice environment to sell them. So that's been the overall market dynamics. Now, there was a blip, right, in 2020. I don't know if it was like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I can't even remember anymore. But in that March, April timeframe where everyone thought the world was ending and sawmills, like everyone else, assumed that this was going to be really bad for the economy and for housing. And so they just said, shut it down, like cut capacities by 25, 50%, depending on who you're looking at. And then about 6 weeks later, realized that was the opposite of what they should have done. They should have been ramping capacity, producing as much as they could. But that period of time was quite stressful for us. As you can imagine, a forest doesn't uniformly consist only of trees of one size. And so some of those trees get shipped to sawmills, but some of them have to go to pulp mills. And when a sawmill says, we're not buying trees anymore, you can't just send a feller buncher operator in the woods and say, just cut those ones down. We'll come back for the rest. It's just not economical. So you effectively render all of these tracts of land unharvestable, which creates a problem with the pulp mills too. Because you're like, well, I was counting on the pulp trees. So we had these 6 weeks of a lot of confusion and juggling, figuring out what would we do in this environment where sawmills weren't buying. So I think that just is one way to illustrate just the interconnectedness of the forest products market. Is we're all different companies optimizing different goals, operating in different markets. But when you really get back to the forest level, we're all in the same market and everyone's decisions affect everyone else. It's one of the neat parts, but also a huge challenge for the industry.
Well, that's the first thing you realize when you go, like the very first place I went was one of your jobs, and very first logging operation I ever visited. So this was 2018. I go out there, it's like April, or I meet you at the airport. We drive out to a site. And when you go out to a logging operation, the first place you typically see is the deck where the loader's at, laying out all of the products. And you think, well, you send a buncher into the woods, it cuts the trees down, you throw them on trucks, and they just go to the mill. That's what happens. But there's so many different products that come out of every track that it makes it really, really complex. So I had no idea that was a thing until I saw how many different piles there are being sorted out. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is way more complex than it looks.
All those guys in the woods, you've got 3 guys running the feller buncher to cut the tree down, the skidder to drag it out of the woods, and the loader to put on the truck. You would think this is incredibly simple and just anybody could go do these jobs. All 3 of those guys see the forest the way that, people see the Matrix in the movie where like, what are they looking at? They're not looking at what I'm looking at. I'm just seeing green zeros and ones. They're seeing more. That's how these guys see the forest, right? They're like walking through there. They see different diameter at breast height, DBHs. Those translate into products. They look up at the height of the tree. They say, okay, there's 2 logs and a stick of pulpwood at the top. Oh, there's 1 log and 2 sticks of pulpwood. Nope, this is a pulpwood tree. And that's going all the way from the guy cutting it down, trying to cut down the same kind of trees so that when he lays down a pile, it's efficiently sorted so that when the skidder comes to pick it up, we don't want that. That's an efficient job to have to sort wood at that stage. So he needs it laid down by product. So has to start that way. Then he drags it to the deck, right? And it has to be put in an efficient manner so that a knuckle boom loader operator mounted on a trailer, so limited ability to move, can sort those into the piles that you saw when you visited, and then efficiently put them on the truck, dynamically managing the inventories, knowing that, we're in a heavy patch of pulpwood right now. So I'm going to have this pulpwood pile is going to pile up on me. When I have a truck come in here for this, the saw timber, am I going to be able to get to it, right? Am I going to be able to move it around and get it on the back of this truck? So there's so much to think about. And that's before you even get into the whole logistics side of the business and the fact that loader operators also having to gauge where the demand exists and if he can ship all products. So it's this really simple 3-stage operation with the truck on the end of it that is actually immensely complex when you get down to managing it at the track by track level.
So the market, everything shuts down and then ramps way back up. Timber, forest products, the price of everything goes through the roof. The loggers don't see a lot of that.
None of it in 2020 for sure.
None of it in 2020. But the sawmills and all the mills are making money, more money than they've made in a
sawmills
decade plus.
In particular, yeah. Sawmills in particular, because those prices are pretty commonly known through the public random lengths and whatnot. They're published pretty well. So we know that the sawmills did quite well, as everyone knows, with the building boom.
And then what's happened with the market recently? Like you said, it's somewhat switched.
I think more so that demand, it's like the whole economy. Demand stayed really strong. I think we're in this post-COVID economy. A lot of people talk about that. Demand is strong, but the supply chain is just all over the freaking place. And you've got shortages. And I think one of the things that's happened with worker shortages, with parts shortages, with these global supply chains is just everything is in short supply. And so industries that used to fight amongst themselves are now fighting with each other. So everyone's looking and saying, how can I get creative and solve my problem? And to an extent, I think that has led to the highest value adding industries to be able to win some of those battles, and lower value added industries or commodity industries, or certainly, when we're in forest products, which is a definitive commodity, we're kind of having to get really creative, but having to now, instead of just battle amongst the forest products industry, fight with other industries that want truck drivers and want skilled equipment labor. And the mills are dealing with the same thing. And I think all of us in this industry are dealing with technicians shortages and people to fix things. And it's all, industries trying to look wherever they can to get good talent, and talent generally wanting to move up market, right? And move into the best positions that they can. And I think that's left forest products with this situation where it's really difficult to run a forest products company right now. And trucking in specific is in short supply for a lot of people. And the financial situation has now been exacerbated by fuel and general inflation, which I think everyone's feeling on equipment prices, parts, orders. Productivity is maybe a little bit lower. You still deal with COVID outages like everyone, and parts supply issues. I know it takes us significantly longer to get a truck turned out of the shop than it used to. All these things just put a lot of pressure on the business. And in this industry, that's led to lower supply. So there's fewer loggers, I think, that are out there, and certainly fewer truck drivers that were in this industry 1, 2, 3 years ago, certainly the 5 years ago. All the while, demand, I think, at the mill level has stayed very, very strong. They have a lot of customer ability to pay, and they're trying to sell their goods. And so we've had a little bit more of what we call an open order environment, more often than not for the past year, where they say, hey, how much can you produce? Bring it on, which is not the same as it was from when you and I were talking. We're dealing with, all right, we're allowed to ship 50 loads into this mill. We really need 60 something to be, to even make it. How do we try to fit our business model to the amount of demand that exists in the market today? So we've got a little bit of a different supply demand environment, which is benefiting us now, but partially it's benefiting us because it's so hard to run a business right now.
It is interesting because there's a lot of businesses that need truck drivers right now. And it's not, driving a logging truck is a specialized kind of truck driving, but it's truck driving nonetheless. So you have e-commerce and all these other businesses knocking on their door. And a lot of times they have just more money, bigger margins to go hire those people. But the forestry product side of things, it's pretty essential. I mean, like toilet paper, things like that are pretty much a basic necessity that doesn't exist without the forestry products. So you have all these industries out for themselves. And it's funny, it's like Amazon, probably the biggest consumer of boxes, like probably biggest consumer of cardboard in the United States, if I had to guess. But they're the ones taking all the people that you need to go create the product in the first place. So it's just this weird situation that no one has figured out right now.
It's like it's very hard to find a net gain anywhere because when you're in this constrained environment, someone's always taking from someone else, which is very different than the mindset. I think there's a better way to live, which is one of abundance and thinking about how to increase the pie. But we are in this moment working back towards that where there's a short supply of a lot of things. So we certainly have seen some of our drivers take positions in companies that they're moving up market. But I also, I think that's on us to create the right value proposition and have that conversation with our customers. Mm-hmm. I think that's, at the end of the day, I think the one thing that can be more important to you than the margin structure of your industry or how value added the services that you provide is how you can talk about it, how you understand your business and how you tell the story of where you are and what's important. And I think for our business, what's really set us aside is just being able to go, or set us apart is being able to go to our customers and talk about what we're experiencing, what we want to do about it and why we want to do that, and then make the ask. And I think when you do that, many customers have been understanding and have been wanting to help solve the problem and not wanting to lose all of our drivers to Amazon and not wanting to lose them to Coca-Cola. They want to say, what do we need to do, right, to make this happen? Because we have a multi-$100 million facility we need to run, and it only runs if these drivers keep showing up. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a willingness to solve the problem, but it starts with telling the story.
Well, and we talked about earlier, it's okay, great, you can cut all this wood down, cut all these trees down, but they're worthless just sitting out there on the land. They're worth nothing until they get to the mill. And to get it to the mill, you need trucking. And so it is it's an essential part of the business. You can and it's the same thing with contractors. And I think we were talking about this. Everybody's looking at trucking like a liability or a nuisance or a pain in the ass. But I think it's one of the biggest opportunities. And they're giving all of their truck driving to other companies. But that's essentially giving control of your whole project to somebody else, your whole operation to somebody else. Like if you give your trucks to somebody else, now you are at, it doesn't matter how productive your logging crews are. It doesn't matter what kind of contracts you have at the mills. They control your business.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's one thing since 2017, 2016, when I started doing this business that I immediately did differently probably than the industry, which is trucking on its face in this industry is a terrible business. And that's why people call it a nuisance and a necessary evil. Mm-hmm. Logging on its face is a really good business. So everybody wants to do it. There's generally been oversupply and people are happy that are in that business. The truth of it is though, nowadays, you can't have one or the other. You have to have both. You can't do one without the other. And logging is a terrible business if you don't have trucking. And so you need that trucking, and we invested differentially in that trucking force by putting new equipment, better drivers, trying to hire fleet management services, things that just weren't happening at the time. 5 years on, trucking is certainly something we're known for. We've got these green trucks running on the road that are funny looking compared to most of the loggers that we compete with.
Yeah.
But they've been this symbol of people know that's a nice truck that came in here. I think now I've had Nils remark to me that like we see a lot more nice trucks in here now than we did a few years ago. And I think it's because everyone has been copying you. That we put some nice trucks on the road. We say this is how it should be done, and some people have followed. But it's a tough decision because you have to be willing to say trucking is part of my business. And a lot of people want to say it's not, but it is absolutely core to the business model. It's core to keeping the revenue coming in and making sure, like you said, that all the effort that's put in the woods gets converted to revenue. And ultimately, my customer is the mill. So if I say, hey, I don't know what happened between my loader and you, it just didn't show up. I thought it would have showed up. We loaded on the truck. I have to have control over that. I have to be able to tell them that I have the ability to influence the only thing that matters to them, which is the wood being delivered to their facilities. So, but it's only getting harder, I think, to run small trucking companies this day and age. And so, I'm glad we put in the hard work we did to learn about how to do it. And now we need to put in the hard work to learn how to do it even better at scale.
And the scale part's interesting because is that something like we just talked about the bigger partners that came in and all that?
Oh, we can absolutely talk about
all that's public knowledge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you go from this small little logging company to then scaling up to investing in trucking to right sizing. And then over the past 2 years, really dialing in logging operations. Like you've said everything it's going really well now, which is awesome. Thanks to, I think a lot of it's been you started to get the right leadership, like a Udell, for example, in place and allowed them to do what they do. And I think it's beared a lot of fruit.
Yeah. The first thing for us to mature as an organization from some acquired crews that didn't have the owners managing them anymore was getting a solid level of leadership in place. And so you mentioned Udell. We've got a timber procurement leader named Wes. We've got trucking leadership on our team that has been overseeing the fleet. And these are all positions that didn't exist in the early years. So we put them in place, and they really have given the guys a lot more guidance and support that a lot of logging crews don't get. Helping them troubleshoot daily issues, connecting them to the back office environment, and just creating a better place to work where there's this feeling now where if you're really good at what you do and you're in a region where we are, like this is a good place to come be a foreman. This is a good place to come be a skidder driver and work your way up the ladder.
Yeah.
I truly believe by adding those positions, which we've mostly filled through internal means, they've been people that have been promoted from within, not hired from the outside. We just said this message, which is very true and very much how I believe, which is this isn't a family company. It doesn't matter what your name is. You come in here and you perform, you're going to get the first shot at these opportunities. We're not going to go outside for those kinds of jobs. So it creates a good culture. I have no doubt that a lot of the people here look up and say, I really like reporting to Udell, and he gets it because he used to do what I do.
Well, when I met him, he was in a feller buncher.
Yeah.
I have a picture of him next to his feller buncher.
And now he runs 9 crews and about 40 people. And we actually, because I believe so strongly that trucking and logging are so heavily integrated, we actually have both report through him, despite having fleet management underneath of Udell's purview. So he, roughly has 70 people reporting to him. And 3 years ago, he was operating the feller buncher, which he'd been doing for a decade. And the truth is, without that experience, he wouldn't be nearly as good at what he's doing. He needed that. And our company needed that.
You said something interesting there. It was that it's not a family company, which I think is fascinating because there is a strong preference in the blue collar world for family businesses. And everybody really stresses the family business, family business, family business. But the downside to a family business is if your last name doesn't line up with the name on the front door, there's only so much opportunity there. In theory, that's not every family business, obviously. Like we had Dan Garcia in here. He runs CW Matthews, for example. That's a family business, but they brought someone else in, and he's earned that position and it's done extremely well at it. But there's a lot of places, and probably these small logging companies, where you are what you are. There's no opportunity beyond that. And for somebody that's motivated, that's not a long-term career plan for them.
I would say in our market in particular, there's not any other non-family businesses I can think of. So we are the only one that isn't closely held by a family member. And yeah, I think that is what draws many people to our company. And you combine not being a family business with also having the ambition to grow and the desire to do so responsibly with good management, to look over safety and productivity and make sure we're actually doing a good job. That creates opportunities. And so people come in and say, well, there are going to be opportunities. They're growing. And those opportunities could go to anyone because they're not a family company. And in case I needed more proof, there they are, right? There's been some examples of this with people getting promoted from within. Because still, you could be a not family company. You could be growing and you could choose that you need to bring in talent from the outside.
Sure.
And we still do that. There's positions that's the right thing to do and you have to go about it that way. But I've said for any position, if the skills exist on the team to meet the need the business has, always going to look internally first. Because I think career pathing within these organizations is it's a sorely missing aspect of heavy equipment and certainly driving trucks. There's just not a lot of places to go, and you need to provide as many incentives as you can so that people who have ambition and have desire to do more than what they're doing today can see a path.
Now, to the point I was getting to earlier, you were in a really good spot, and it attracted the interest of a much, 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 much larger, ultimately much larger business that bought a majority of the company. Well, how long ago? A year ago?
No, 6 months ago.
6 months ago. Yeah, I guess I talked to you early this year, January.
Yeah.
About it, and it was pretty
just
damn
after
new.
Christmas Eve. We mostly finalized on Christmas Eve and at the end of the year last year.
So how has that changed things? Because when I talked to you, I was like, well, that's interesting. I didn't see that one coming. I mean, for who, I figured there was a exit at some point, or that doesn't necessarily surprise me. There's been a lot of acquisitions going on just in general, so I'm always open to that because I feel like anybody can sell nowadays with what's going on. But to who you sold to, it's particularly interesting.
Yeah. And to be very clear, we weren't on the exit path by any means.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say just begun to really figure it out and feel like the vision could unfold over several years.
Which is why I was more surprised.
To managing it year over year. Yeah. So it was exciting for us to be running the business in 2021, coming out of 2020, operating in a strong way, feeling like market dynamics were getting a little bit better for us to achieve some of the things we wanted to. So the timing was good for us to hold. However, I think like you've just said, the partner was unique. So it got our attention. Partners, the Lutz Group, they're a subsidiary of the Traton Group, which is a large truck manufacturer. And they have global brands building trucks for heavy industry, with a heavy focus in forestry and mining and agriculture. And they have a subsidiary that's trying to do innovative things in the transport space to learn about the business models of the future, which are going to require them to know more about their customers. So forestry in specific is an area that they have a focus area on for thinking about the future of EV vehicles and of autonomous transport. And so coming from where I was for 5 years and fighting the daily grind battles of trying to get guys hired and move wood and keep the mills happy and figure out how to have a sustainable business, having someone come in and talk about EV and autonomous was kind of like almost being in a dream. You're like, these aren't the kinds of things I need to think about for a decade. And so it piques your interest. Big company, a lot of resources, and an interesting and compelling vision to want to improve transport. So LOTS ultimately stands for Lean Optimized Transportation Solutions. So in addition to sort of these piloting and figuring out these future technologies, what they really want is to bring new systems into the transport space that can eliminate waste in industries that haven't yet done that. So in the US, vocational sectors like forestry, as you saw when you visited and as I've lived, just really underdeveloped logistics systems, if any logistics systems.
Yeah.
So when they looked at forestry and did a market assessment, this is an area where we could make a real impact. They also wanted to start to understand the US. It's a the most innovative country in the world, and it's a place where autonomous and electric technologies are going to take foothold first. And so they wanted to be here.
And it's a Swedish company.
And it is a Swedish-based company. And they were looking at a U.S. market assessment and looked at many, many potential partners. But in looking in these vocational spaces, as we all know, a lot of small companies. And finding a partner that both was small and successful and in a space they were interested in, and also had some leadership that was interested in growth and the journey, because this isn't a traditional journey for a company like ours to take.
Yeah.
I think that narrows the set quite a bit. But ultimately, that was what made sense for them. For us, we just immediately leapfrogged from this small company, resource constrained, fighting it out every single day, really having differentiators, but also in some regards, competing on level footing with our competitors, to now we're in a sense playing a bit of a different game. And so we've got access to really top management talent in Sweden, a support team with business development, corporate development, finance, operational resources that, again, are giving us services that we previously maybe couldn't have afforded. They're giving us this futuristic vision, which is the ability to mesh the day-to-day with a larger purpose and vision of pushing forward some of these technologies and business models that are really enticing to some people, and that brings in a different level of talent to want to work with us. And then ultimately the ability to just have additional resources in the company, right, to pursue growth, because we have this now, instead of what I would have said an incremental growth strategy that we had before and do whatever I can handle and whatever my capacity can handle. Now we have much larger growth ambitions to go after opportunities within the industry and build the kind of scale that we think we need to have a really good trucking fleet.
How did they even find you?
Investment banker. An investment banking firm that they were using was doing a market search and found me, and they emailed, and I deleted the first few emails.
Yeah,
because I'm sure you get it.
I get a lot of them
these emails. I would love to buy your business.
Yeah,
I'd love to have a call. Could you send me some information? And after a while of being in these things, you just delete. And thankfully, he followed up again, and the banker said, this is a really interesting opportunity, and sent me more of I would say a normal response as opposed to a form email. And that's when I kind of read it a bit more closely and saw the buyer and saw that they were, ultimately rolled up to Volkswagen. And anytime you get an email like that, you're going to respond once you understand what it is. So started the conversation, but even still, it was a year-long process to get to the finish line.
Yeah. We had we closed on an investment round end of last year. And I am so naive. You file all of this with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. And in doing so, it becomes public information. I had no idea. And so starting in, early this year, you start to get emails and messages from venture capital companies and private equity companies, and it's all the form emails that they send out.
Yep.
And I'm sitting here, I'm like, or we want to buy your company or whatever it is. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, why the hell am I getting all these? Like, where is this coming from? And then I realized, once we file with the SEC, now we become part of this database, and they just go in there and scrape it and send all these emails out looking for opportunities. That makes sense.
And you gave them even better information than they had on me, because you, through that filing, showed that you were investable.
Correct.
Right. Whereas a lot of these people that are in the lower market, which is, small business, they're just going out off of LinkedIn or Dunn's list or other kinds of business lists. And they need to send an even tighter form email, because they're going to have to send 10x the number of emails to get a legitimate acquisition target. So
that is fascinating, though, that it just came about randomly. Pretty good timing, and really aligns with where you guys want to go.
That at the end of the day, the email and the follow through by the banker was what got me to take the phone call. But you have to have some larger reason to want to pursue the partnership. And for me, it had always been about trucking. That's the pain point in the industry, is what we were differentially focusing on. And it also was the toughest problem for me to solve. It is just, it's not just a bellwether problem. It's not just a forestry problem. It's a nationwide, if not North American, if not some other areas of the world problem is trucking and how to get these systems working better and recruit good people.
Yeah.
They came in and said, that's what we're most interested in. That's what we want to fix. We want to work on logistics. We want to grow the trucking business. I said, if we can figure this problem out together, we will be everywhere I dreamed of being and beyond. And in speaking with them and understanding the resources and the thought they had, they built a business from scratch in Brazil that now has 1,000 drivers and hundreds and hundreds of trucks, oftentimes double shifted. And that operation was built very quickly. And the expertise on that team is expertise I now have access to. So it felt very comfortable that the vision was really aligned with where I wanted to go with the company and that it was just going to supercharge our path.
It is what I've always found most interesting with you and then Keaton, who originally introduced us, was you've always had a desire to really make the forest products industry better. Like you haven't really been, you need to make a functional business because that's how it all works. But it's not been about scale and go make a big business so we can talk about how much revenue we have. And that's it. Like, I feel like a lot of people are there. They're just driven by growth, revenue, how much you have on your balance sheet. There's just, and okay, if that drives you, that drives you. But you've always been focused on, hey, these logging operations are not as efficient as they can be, and they're oftentimes getting taken advantage of because there's a flaw in how the industry's laid out. Maybe we can go create a business that starts to change that. And I feel like you haven't done it, but you've made a lot of progress towards that in the past 4 years. A lot of progress.
I think we've made progress as a team. And the progress we've made has made echoes in the industry also. And that I still think we were one of the very first in South Carolina to put dash cameras in the trucks. And now it's very uncommon that you would see trucks without dash cameras from the bigger operations. Simple things that forestry industry is typically behind the rest of the world, but just us going out and saying, let's catch up, others have caught up as well. So I feel like we have made a dent. But ultimately, I grew up in a frugal Midwestern home, and debt is a bad word, and don't take risk, just live responsibly. And so all these values that have been instilled in me have made it such that at times I probably am not as risk seeking as I could be with the business, but it also makes me have a high level of responsibility, I think, for the people on the team. And we've just pursued the direction we pursued at the pace we could, to feel like we weren't going to break it, because I always felt like we had families depending on us and people depending on us and customers depending on us. Yeah. So, but we've made a lot of progress, and I don't think we've left the people behind at all. We've raised wages every year. Even in our tough years, we knew people were core to what we're doing. The people are more important than the machine. So at the end of the day, we've tried to go on this journey where we start to create an industry where it isn't a flat pay rate structure and you're just going to work for your uncle because why would I ever go work somewhere else? But you say, I want to go work there because it's interesting work. I learn how to do the work and feel accomplished about what I do. I know that they'll take care of me, and they're working toward a better industry, which ultimately means better financial returns for me, right? I mean, we, more than any other year, we're experiencing price increases this year. Yeah. You can't expect to run your business without giving raises every year. And there's a lot of people in this industry that have done that, and that are slow to catch up. And so I think in all those ways, we've tried to create this environment where employees are getting benefits they wouldn't get elsewhere, are getting a good work environment, good management structure, safe place to go to work, and ultimately the promise that more opportunities, or at least higher wages, will be fought for by their management for the company and not just pocketed or not thought about.
It's pretty cool. I mean, and you were saying, I've come a long way because I think it was the first check I got for photography. You gave it to me. It was like $2,000.
$2,000.
Yeah. And it was a paper check. It was
Where
the first
are my shares.
The first ever check I got as a business owner was you gave it to me. And then I stayed in your apartment in Columbia.
Yep.
I didn't, and you drove me around. So I had no
Yep.
rental car. I had no hotel expense, but then the flights, ended up being a ton of money, and
you probably lost money.
I
on the
probably
deal.
lost money on
and
the deal.
I think that actually, I think Udell dropped a tree on your drone.
That was a second. That was the second.
It was the other job.
That was
So it wasn't
another
Udell.
visit.
Okay, but, oh, okay.
Yeah, that was another visit. But it was recording, so it made good footage.
Yeah.
If the drone gets destroyed while recording and you can get the footage back, worth the drone.
Yeah.
But what if it gets destroyed and it wasn't recording, or you don't get the footage? Then it's like, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
It's you were saying, I've progressed since then, but it's been cool to watch you guys progress since then, because I feel like I've been on the sidelines of what you guys are doing. It's like, wow, this, so they said they were going to go do this, and they've done that. Like, which doesn't sound like a big achievement, but in business, that's a big achievement. You say you're going to go do something, you do it. And you're like, okay, cool. And then this is that next phase of it, but you have a lot more resources to go do it even better.
One of my favorite quotes is, I think it's Bill Gates attributed, but you always overestimate what you can accomplish in 1 year and underestimate what you can accomplish in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could scale that back to 5 even, because I feel like every single year at the end of the year, I say like, we did not do nearly as much as I was trying to accomplish this year, and I feel behind. But then when you get to the end of 5 years, you're like, how did I possibly get this accomplished? Or we've moved so far, right? So I think that's one of the things, is just we're both kind of recognizing how far we've come, in part because we've been doing it a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really difficult to recognize it early on. I think it only compounds over time. So I feel like we're getting to that hockey stick point in an industry that really doesn't have any idea what a hockey stick is.
Yeah.
Right. But I think we're going to start to see real stuff happen now. We're bringing on, like I said, we've got talent from Sweden that's helping us with solve problems we've never been able to have the analytical horsepower to look at before. We're bringing on new key people within finance and business development within the company to do things that we've never been able to do for our customers before. And it's just a way of operating the business that's going to immediately show our customers and the people that work with us how much better the industry can be. We were doing it, on a bootstrapping, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're doing it with a little bit more commitment. And I think that the next 5 years is going to show a little bit more an exciting growth path for us than even the last 5 has. But the last 5 we could not produce the next 5 without having experienced the last 5.
Sure. I think the blue collar world in general has some of the most potential out of any industry in the country going forward. And it pisses me off. I used to, in college, I used to read every weekend. My break from school was reading. And I would, and I remember my girlfriend in college, she'd be so annoyed because it'd be Saturday morning. I'd be up and out of there, by like 5:30, going to get coffee at 6:30 and go read and just sit by myself for 2 or 3 hours. And I would always read. We made a deal. I get one morning out of the weekend, and then the other morning we can do whatever. So it worked out great. But
you're not sounding like someone I'd want to be dating, but that's just
but it's always been my thing, and I got away from just sitting and reading for a little bit on the weekends. Got back into it, so I read Forbes and Fortune and some of these business magazines.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be about a bunch of different things. Now every edition I read, and I'm almost just going to give up on reading these stupid magazines now. It's all about Bitcoin or NFTs or, it's just like, okay, yeah, there's this whole computer world and there's all this opportunity. I get that. Well, talk about a little bit. I would love to learn about what blockchain is and the potentials of it. And I learned about blockchain. I'm like, yeah, that has a lot of potential benefit. But then, so you have all these people just rushing off to this NFT, crypto, tech world, forgetting about this whole other world that's been totally underserved from a talent standpoint, in my opinion, for a sizable chunk of time that is not going away at all. So the opportunity there, I think, just at scale is greater because it's not going away anytime soon. So it's stable. And the demand's not going away, but the ability to serve the market.
I always like, it's a ridiculously simple framework, but two things generally happen. You build and you maintain. Like after it's built, it has to be maintained. You got the dismantle or get rid of at the end part, but that's, less important, I think. And everybody, it feels like for the last 10 years has all wanted to be a builder, innovate, be in a startup, do something new, get away from the old stodgy industries. I don't want to work at GE. I want to work at Facebook.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think there's just been this, wait a minute, similar to the tree example I gave earlier of the younger trees growing to the same age, but we have been building new things that need to be maintained, but we also have old things that need to be maintained. Mm-hmm. Now everything needs to be maintained. And a lot of these businesses that what we're doing, even if we're building a new road, right, we're maintaining the road system. Mm-hmm. And even if we're, what we're doing in forestry is sort of maintaining this ecosystem of forest products that's existed for a long time. It's not overly innovative, right? It's not something that's going to get you on the cover of Fortune magazine.
No.
But it has to be done. And there's no way to do many, many other tasks in the economy without these tasks continuing. Mm-hmm. But now there's a shortage. There's not enough people. Everybody's ran to build. Nobody's running towards maintain. And the maintain is just this massive opportunity, right? And so the big thing is the opportunities there, but we need the leadership there. They need the leadership there to see how to capitalize on that. And I honestly think that a lot of these leaders in those companies just need to have higher expectations. They're not used to being in a position where their service is highly valued and in demand. And as the economy continues to flip that way, especially if some infrastructure projects get taken on and things go in that direction, I think people have to understand that their service is highly valued. And we all have to tell the story that we are going to be moving toward a direction of higher value service.
Yeah.
And those values are going to be reinvested in the people because it's what drives the results in the industry and it's what is needed for the next generation.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, toilet paper is as inelastic as it gets. Is that the right word?
Inelastic?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We could have a debate about how inelastic toilet paper is because there's some substitutes out there.
Yeah. But I mean, it's from a market share perspective, toilet paper has a majority of the market share.
Agreed.
And so, and you need that.
Yeah.
You need that every day, no matter what you're doing, no matter where the economy's at. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
You need to fill that demand.
Yeah, agreed.
What did everybody go after in COVID? Toilet paper.
Yeah. And you know what? All the substitutes for toilet paper don't alleviate the problem you're talking about, which is they're all paper product substitutes for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's core products. I mean, that's what I honestly, forest products is so core to daily life. And whenever I read a climate change article that says we need to stop cutting trees down, you just want to scream about how many other things you need to write in that paragraph that would need to stop, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is not logging. The problem is sustainable forestry and harvesting practices. And that's something that in the Southeast, I feel like is very, very closely managed with private land ownership, a lot of personal pride, as well as company management and ensuring that these timber plantations and stands are managed for the future. So yeah, because at the end of the day, you're not just talking about some piece of an industry going away in the building products. You're talking about paper, pulp products, floorboards. There's wood in the roof of a lot of cars. There's, we talked about pizza boxes and you've got lumber and OSB at the store. I mean, you could go through a huge list of products that include wood and pulp. And so it's just an incredibly critical industry. So I think that gives everybody a natural sense of purpose.
Do you think, would any of the mills you guys work with be cool with us showing, you cut the tree down and then you haul it out of the woods, you put it on a truck, you bring it to a mill, what happens with it at the mill? Do you think any of them would be open to that?
I think so. Yeah. So,
because that'd be pretty cool.
Sawmills are certainly a little easier to understand and see inside. If you've never seen a paper machine before, they're massive, right? Multi-story machines.
Yeah.
It's incredible that the machine that makes a piece of paper is so big, but it is a massive process with a chemical a highly technical chemical process on the front end and a large kind of industrial manufacturing process to produce the product. A little bit harder to get video of.
Yeah.
Sawmills, yeah. I
maybe
think
a
you
sawmill.
we could certainly get into some. I think some of them probably think the technology is fairly proprietary, but I think a lot of it these days is third party.
That's all the same thing.
You face that all the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and
really, how closely is someone going to be able to reverse engineer the way your machine quickly scans and cuts the log into an efficient? I doubt they're going to be able to spring any competitors from 10 seconds of video.
No, but even contractors, they think they're so slick with how they do things, and it's like I'm not here to call you not slick, but the other guy uses GPS too. Wow, you use GPS like we were talking about. You'd think that they'd be further along based on where the rest of society's at and what they talk about, like it's the most groundbreaking thing ever. You're not comparing it to what the previous generation of that was. You're comparing it to where the rest of society is. And you're just like, okay, that's it. Like, is there an and here, or this is it? And you don't want to be rude, but at the same time, it's not always that impressive.
Yeah. And I think it's different industries or different maturations. Like I said, in the forestry space, what's innovative in the forestry space was innovative in the most of the world 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, moving dirt's the same thing.
Moving dirt's the same thing. So in the sawmills, I think you'd say the same, which is maybe 10 years ago or something, the technology that scanned a log and figured out the best and most profitable configurations to cut, according to that log's dimensions and size and bark and also market prices and demand and inventory levels.
Yeah.
That would have been revolutionary.
Totally.
Nowadays, any big sawmill's using something like that.
Yeah. I mean, to compete, you have to use it.
Yep.
You're not competitive without it anymore, which is like grading with GPS. Like if you're not grading with GPS, you can't bid jobs effectively and you can't make money anymore. So,
and by the way, that's how we know we're making progress, because we're bringing these things into the world that were once innovative and now become commonplace. Mm-hmm. But then we have to look down the field. And I think that's one of the things you and I talk about a lot too, is just some of the solutions are technology based. Some of them are human. And I think everyone gets excited about the technology ones, but we need as many people as possible to get excited about the human ones.
That's the whole workforce development conversation. It goes so quickly to technology. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Technology, great. Check that box. And then what? And then what? Like that. Like a lot of people, I feel like, have this misconception that to attract the next generation, we just need to talk about the technology we have or use more technology. It's like, no, not really. I think we need to focus more on people, but going full circle, it's squishy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you've given me a lot of purpose in how I've thought about people, in the sense that more so than compensation or anything else, it's all about how that person feels that job represents them and how they feel when they go to the job. And I feel like that's where I as a, I don't consider myself old, but I realize that I'm not in my 20s anymore. And I underrated social media for a while. It was just something to scroll through and see your friends. And I grew up in the era of Twitter was just people posting what they had for lunch. And this is delete, we don't need to use this. I've realized it can be a force for bad when people use it to profess stereotypes or put peer pressure on each other and feel like they have to keep up with the Joneses. But it can be an incredible force for good when you get to showcase things about your life that you're proud of, that you should be proud of, that others in your life that you care about don't know. Mm-hmm. And the more and more that we've been able to do, we do small thing once in a while, Friday faces, and stole that idea from you guys and throw up a few photographs and portraits that we do the best imitation of a Bellwether photographer we can and put them up and give a little bit of a shout out to somebody that deserves it. I think those really count for a lot and raise the profile of those positions for the people in those communities with their family. It just makes a difference to know that your employer cares about you and they'll say it publicly. Mm-hmm. And I think the old world mentality would have been, I'm not going to post that guy up there. You might come ask for a raise or something, or, I don't need to showcase one guy. What about all the other guys? And I think the answer is everyone likes to see people that are doing what they're doing be praised.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will conclude with, to this day, some of my favorite places I've ever visited are still Bellwether logging operations. And I shit you not, to this day. I don't know, and I can't even tell you why. I just love visiting South Carolina logging operations.
You should come back, or at least send somebody to come back and visit us. We got to do this because I was happy when you did it because I was following you and everything you posted was gray and brown. And then suddenly we had some green, which is a really nice add to the Dirt World color palette.
Sure.
But nowadays, like I think when you came, we had a few crews that we were trying to figure out how to really get things humming. And today, you know, we're moving, should do over 700,000 tons of timber, 25,000 truckloads, you know, 9 amazing foremen, a bunch of managers, 40 truck drivers, that are all like an integral part of our team. And we're just headed in an awesome direction. And I truly believe that, like, for us, the challenges are the opportunities, because they create environments for change. And that's what we're trying to do, is change things. And so you should come photograph and see if you can tell the difference between the first time you were there, because I think there is a pretty big difference from where we are and where we were.
So I'll probably notice a little bit, but the thing is, my eye is untrained when it comes to logging. So an earth moving operation, I'm getting to the point now where it's like, I can tell you if it's a good looking operation or not. I have not moved a lot of dirt myself, but I've been around enough now where it's like, this logging though, it's all cool to me, and it all just blows me away every time because I haven't been around it all that much. So I'll probably notice a little bit, but honestly, it's all just cool.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what I'm looking at a lot of times.
It is, it's so unseen. I mean, so much of what you've photographed and put out there is just things that are unseen and people don't understand. I think that sometimes the danger of it is making it look simpler than it is, because I know I'm guilty of it, right? I think this is a good lesson for life. When you don't understand something, you generally think it's easier than it is. And once you begin to understand, you realize how much complexity is there. I look at the mining videos you post and say, that's just some guys scooping something and dumping it in the back of the truck. What a piece of cake. Nothing is easy. And in forestry, the same thing. I always fear that people will see it and say that looks easy. And it's certainly a lot of hard work, a labor of love. And I'm just grateful that so many people have decided to dedicate their work time to coming and doing the logging operation. And that at our company, it's not just people that have grown up from the age of 2 knowing they were going to do it, that we've actually brought some people in that have decided to be in the industry, which is a completely different journey. And I appreciate those people as much or more than the others. So it'd be super fun to have you back. We can do a standing timber through the mill operation. We just got to pick the right client.
That'd be cool.
We can brainstorm on that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
You should, and then what we need to do is get some footage inside of a truck. Because you gotta. That is a piece of the puzzle that never gets documented.
No, I mean, start from the beginning. Drive with the truck. Sit in the passenger seat. Go to the mill. Go through the mill, like from A to Z.
Yep.
Not A to Z, and then run by Home Depot and go to the lumber section of Home Depot.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. All right, Matt. Well, thanks for stopping by. If you haven't checked out Bellwether, you guys are on Instagram.
We are on Instagram.
You're on LinkedIn.
We're on LinkedIn. We're on TikTok now.
Yeah.
And we also are, so we've got our website, bellwetherfp.com, which you and your team helped with. And then we are also now part of the LOTS group, which is LOTS group.com. And so we link through there, but we'll be doing some more co-branding with them as we kind of broaden the partnership in the U.S.
Has the website been a worthwhile endeavor?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I assume that was part of why the inbound came for the deal, but I think also we get a lot of applicants through the career page on the website. We've gotten a ton through Jazz, which we still use, right? And in general, I think I use it a lot for storytelling, just because it was that one place where we captured the story. And rather than march a slide deck in front of somebody, I can always pull that up and show them the about page and the mission. And it still resonates with me today. So some of that hard thinking that didn't increase our loads on the day that I thought about it, but it's certainly increased the value of the business since we did it.
Isn't that something?
You never know. Sometimes you got to just take your eyes off of the day to day.
All right, Matt. Well, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me to your beautiful office. It's great to be here.